begin today talking about two different kinds of sin. There's the sin that you could commit, I call it the sin of malice. This is when you commit a sin because you want to commit the sin. Oftentimes this might be like a sin of revenge, right? You're mad at someone, or you want to do something to spite someone, so you just go out and you sin. You wake up in the morning, it's predetermined, you're like, I want to do this bad thing, I want to take revenge on this person, right? And you sin. I feel like those aren't the biggest sins that we struggle with. Usually I think we generally have good intentions, we don't want to do something just out of malice. And so we try to live a good life, but that doesn't mean we don't sin. Oftentimes we still fall into sin, but we fall into a sin, and it was hard for me to come up with a name for this one, but it's like a sin of pressure, okay? We do the wrong thing, not because we woke up in the morning and we were like, I would love to do the wrong thing today. We do the wrong thing because we felt pressured to do it. We were stuck between a rock and a hard place, and we felt like we didn't have another option. And for this example, I want to talk about the Lord of the Rings. I don't know how familiar people are with the story, but the basic idea is that there's a bad guy, his name is Sauron, and he controls people with this ring. It's called the Ring of Power. And the main character is Frodo. And Frodo has this burden, he has to carry the ring, and he wants to bring it to Mount Doom where it can be destroyed. So Frodo's got this ring, and he's told, don't ever put the ring on. It's not going to help you, it's not a good thing to do. Don't wear the ring. Now Tolkien, the author of The Lord of the Rings, was Catholic, and this is very symbolic. Wearing the ring is symbolism for sin. When you put the ring on, it symbolizes the act of sinning. So Frodo's, okay, I'm not going to wear the ring. The problem is the ring gives you a perk. When you put the ring on, you turn invisible. Sounds like a superpower, right? It sounds like a great thing. But Frodo says, okay, I'm not going to wear the ring. Wearing the ring is a sin. Not going to do it, okay? He's traveling down the road. The big bad guy, Sauron, sends these ring wraiths after him. These terrifying, hooded figures that ride on demented, dying-looking horses. And he gets cornered. He gets stuck between a rock and a hard place. There's a battle ensuing. The ring wraiths are everywhere. He's backed up against a wall. The ring wraith pulls out his sword, and what does Frodo do? Frodo says, I'm in a bad situation. I have a ring in my pocket that can make me go invisible. How am I supposed to not do this? So Frodo pulls out the ring, puts it on, and he turns invisible to everyone except the ring wraiths. It doesn't help him, and in fact it makes things worse. And Frodo comes away from that situation with a wound. And I'm not going to spoil anything else. If you haven't seen The Lord of the Rings, you should. But there's a lesson there. Tolkien is speaking theologically there. He's talking about the sins that we commit, not out of malice, but out of pressure. The sins that we commit because we feel like we have to. We think we're going to get some sort of advantage or more energy or escape from an awkward situation. Maybe we tell a lie, to save ourselves from something. And he says, you might think that's really helping you, but it's not. The sin doesn't save you. Here's another way to talk about these sins. We're worried that we're going to be forced into a situation where we're abandoned by God. We're worried we're just going to be left alone. And that the sin gives us security. Putting the ring on gives us security. And that's where we need to talk about Romans 8:38, which was in the reading today. Nothing will separate you from the love of God. Nothing. Ever. Neither height, nor depth, nor principalities, nor powers. There is no kind of force, no sadness, no tragedy, no fear or anxiety. There is not a force in the universe. Apart from your own free will, there is no force in the universe that has the power to separate you from the love of God. You are never abandoned. So you never have to choose sin. Those situations where we feel like there's a lot of pressure and we have to do the wrong thing, it's a lie. It's from the devil. It's not real. There is no force in the universe that can separate you from the love of Christ. That doesn't mean we don't need courage sometimes. That doesn't mean doing the right thing doesn't involve suffering. That's true. That can happen. But there's no situation that can separate you from the love of Christ. As long as you choose Christ. That is the solemn promise that we get from the scriptures today. And that is the promise that St. Charbel built his entire life on. I know we all love St. Charbel, but at the same time, very few of us understand him. Here's a man who left the entire world. He left every job opportunity, every opportunity to become successful or powerful. He left the entire world behind him. He joined a monastery. He barely ate any food. He fasted every day, went to confession every day, and that wasn't even enough for him. Then he left the monastery and lived as a hermit, all alone up on a mountaintop. Any volunteers? That's a tough life. And you would only choose to live that life if you believe that nothing can separate you from the love of God. If you study the early hermits and the desert fathers, they loved this verse, Romans 8:38. It's all over the sayings of the desert fathers. It's all over the life of St. Anthony, written by St. Athanasius. Okay, because they built their life on this verse. They said, nothing can separate me from the love of Christ? Seriously? Okay, I'm going to run out into the desert and wage war against demons. Prove it, God. Prove that nothing can separate me from your love. And God proved it every single time. And this is why hermits lived as hermits. Hermits like St. Marin, St. Charbel, even St. Elias, whose feast we celebrate today. They lived a life that would be impossible to live if this verse wasn't true. The lives of the hermits and the monks and the saints, they only make sense if nothing can separate us from the love of Christ. If you've ever been afraid of losing God, it was a myth. It was the devil trying to convince you to sin. And again, yes, sometimes we have to suffer. Sometimes we have to be courageous. But where does that courage come from? It comes from this passage. It comes from this belief that nothing, no force in or beyond the universe can separate you from the love